All right. Hello, everyone. About time. It's Sunday night, 8 Central Time, 9 Eastern Time, wherever you might be. We are talking all things college football here on Scarbo After Dark. In case you did not know, I am Kevin Skarbinski, a.k.a. Scarbo. And you've been watching my videos on my YouTube channel, Kevin Skarbinski - Scarbo Knows. So Sunday night is an opportunity for you to join me and for us to talk college football or whatever else you might have on your mind. We had a little technical difficulty there for a few moments, but I believe we are up and running right now. So waiting for the crowd to come streaming in. I don't know if it's as hot as Alabama asphalt where you are, but I don't know that I've ever experienced heat like we are living through over this weekend. Cut the grass yesterday, and I'm still completely worn out. So my respect, much respect for anyone who is on a practice field in a helmet and shoulder pads, hitting, blocking, tackling, high school, college, NFL. How about Ty Simpson in his NFL preseason debut with the Los Angeles Rams yesterday? Outstanding performance. Now, you have to put an asterisk by it because it's the preseason. He's not going to be the starting quarterback, not as long as Matt Stafford's around. But I have a feeling Ty Simpson is going to prove a lot of people wrong. We forget how good a quarterback he was last year before he got hurt, before he got knocked around, before all of the holes in that offensive line started to show up. But big numbers by Ty in his NFL preseason debut. Most importantly, 0 sacks. And when you can keep a quarterback upright and he's not running for his life, if he's got anything about him, he's going to make plays. That's what Ty Simpson did in his first NFL exhibition game. All right, now I can sit here and I can tell you stories all night long. I can give you opinions and insight on college football and other things all night long. But the idea of this chat is you ask, I answer, you comment, I retort. So you are welcome to jump into the chat, ask me any questions you like. Let's try to keep it polite as much as we can, and I will do my best to answer them. Of course, we're coming off the first scrimmages last week at Alabama and Auburn, and as you might expect, very common. Both coaches at Alabama and Auburn, and every other coach of every other team that's just gone through its first scrimmage saw holes, saw things that need to improve, saw position battles that have yet to be decided. Of course, the biggest one, one of the biggest ones in the country that everyone is watching, is at Alabama. It is the quarterback battle between Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. And interestingly, if you read Nick Kelly's article the day after the scrimmage, talking to people who were actually able to watch, that's one disadvantage that those of us in the media now have, is we can't watch scrimmages. Or maybe you get to watch a little bit, stretching a few periods before they actually kick off. But it's a far cry from when I started in this business, when you could watch every play pretty much of every scrimmage. And you had an understanding that you didn't give away formations and trick plays and such. But you got really good insight into the team that you were covering, because you could actually see what it looked like when ones went against ones and ones went against twos, and you saw live game action. And most of these scrimmages now, I think they went over 100 plays at both Alabama and Auburn. And Kalen DeBoer afterwards said he is not closer to making a decision about a starting quarterback at Alabama. It's not reason for concern. In fact, I'm gonna plug my column tomorrow in the Birmingham News, which you can find a link to on AL.com. I went in depth on that subject and on why, if you're an Alabama fan, you should be very excited. about a trend that is gone on in Tuscaloosa with first-year starting quarterbacks going back to Greg McElroy in 2009. Those seasons have turned out fairly well for the Crimson Tide. So the fact that you're going to have a first-time starter is not reason for panic. It's reason for excitement if this trend can continue. And then at Auburn, of course, they had their first scrimmage under Alex Golesh, their first preseason scrimmage under Alex Golesh. And reports out of there were Byron Brown looked good, that the offense made some big plays. But as you would expect, what was it? Golesh said they didn't look like a veteran team. They looked like an emotional team. They were up and down. They had highs and lows. Show me a scrimmage. Show me a first scrimmage of the preseason that is not the case for any team, even a veteran team with a veteran coach like Georgia under Kirby Smart. That's why you scrimmage, to figure out what you do well, what you don't do well, what you got to do better. And again, who's going to start, who's going to get the bulk of the snaps at certain positions. And I mentioned earlier, Nick Kelly had a really interesting article in AL.com talking to people who did watch the scrimmage. And one of the observations was from those folks, per Nick Kelly, and of course they talked to him anonymously because they're not supposed to share that information. But that's what we do in the media. We try to find out stuff that people don't want you to know and share it when it's appropriate, where it's appropriate. And the people that talked to Nick said they thought Keelan Russell clearly outperformed Austin Mack and clearly looked like the better quarterback. One of those people was an NFL scout, an anonymous NFL scout. So take that for what it's worth. I don't think it would surprise anyone that Keelan Russell would look good. We all remember the spring game. Austin Mack wasn't fully healthy, and Keelan really took advantage of his opportunity in that scrimmage, the A-Day scrimmage. One of the more concerning things, though, if you're Alabama, is first of all, A.K. Deere, who's been having a really good camp by all accounts. Everyone you talk to raves about the young running back. Scored a touchdown, but got hurt as well, and looks like he's going to be out a month, first month of the season. We don't know for certain, but he was starting to emerge as a difference maker at tailback, which Alabama certainly needs. They didn't have that last year. They haven't had it for several years, and which makes it all the more amazing that they won 11 games last year and got to the SEC championship game and got to the college football playoff with essentially no running game. So A.K. Deere is going to be out, which you would think would create some opportunity for E.J. Crowell, the fabulous freshman from Jackson High School. But he didn't participate in the scrimmage. He's been banged up. I don't think he's participated in any scrimmage yet since he got to Alabama. He got there early in the spring semester, but he was banged up during the spring, and so he didn't participate in any of the scrimmages there. And he didn't participate in the first fall scrimmage. So everything you hear, though, is it's not serious. It's not something that's going to keep him out for any period of time. So you hope to see everyone be healthy. I'm looking forward to. I'm going to talk to his high school coach, Cody Flournoy. Shameless plug. Starting this Thursday and every Thursday through the regular season, I'll be on Alabama Public Television on our AHSAA network game of the week. We spotlight a specific high school game across the state. Kickoff is always at 7. We do an hour-long pregame show. Chris Blackshear and I are your co-hosts, and we will be in Phoenix City this Thursday. Really exciting way to kick off the season, the Kickoff Classic. It's usually in Montgomery. This year, it's on location on campus, if you will. Not exactly on campus, but in Phoenix City, the home of the Red Devils. We're going to see 2 games featuring championship programs. In a flag football game first that afternoon, we're going to have Central Phoenix City, which has not lost a game in years. Maybe the best high school flag football program in the country. They're taking on Montgomery Catholic. And then after that game ends, about 4:45, 4:50, 5 o'clock-ish, somewhere in there, We are going to have our pregame show for an hour, 5 to 6 or so. And then at 7 o'clock, we will preview Central Phoenix City and Thompson. The evil empire, some people might call the Thompson Warriors. All they do is win state championships. Great quarterback matchup in that game. Of course, Trent Seaborn, an Alabama commit. He's going to try to win his 4th state championship. He won his first one as an 8th grader, starting at quarterback. He's in his senior year. I know a lot of people that compete with Thompson are glad about that. So they will be playing Central Phoenix City, and Cam Coleman's younger brother, BJ, is the starting quarterback there. Central and Thompson played a great semifinal last year in the 7A playoffs, last year of 7A, as, of course, the AHSAA has restructured its postseason, and now you will have just private schools competing against privates and publics against publics once we get into the postseason, but they will mix during the regular season. And this is a great way to kick off our high school football season on Alabama Public Television. We hope everyone will tune in, tell your friends. You want to see some of the future stars that you're going to see playing at Alabama and Auburn and around the SEC, across the country. This is a great opportunity to do it. We go to a different community every Thursday. We did it for the first year last year with the pregame show, and it has been a blast. So we get to talk to the coaches, Mark Freeman. I do that all the time. Mark Freeman at Thompson, and Cody Flournoy, who, of course, was at Jackson and coached E.J. Crowell, Landon Dickerson, and the Aggies to 2 straight state championships. When Patrick Nix decided to retire from coaching, we'll see if that sticks. So he stepped down at Central, and Central smartly hired Cody Flournoy. I don't imagine there will be much drop-off, if there's any at all, for the Red Devils. So, again, hope everyone will tune in on Thursday night, and then every Thursday thereafter on Alabama Public Television. Pre-game show at 5, kickoff of the main attraction at 7. But we also get a double dip this week. We again get a great flag football championship between Montgomery Catholic and Central Phoenix City. So I hope everyone will check that out. Again, that will be Thursday night. So what should we talk about? This Jayden Daniels controversy at LSU just has me, it has me laughing on the one hand and scratching my head on the other. What are the people close to Jayden Daniels thinking? And I don't know that I've ever seen an athlete get clowned, and I hesitate to use words that aren't verbs as verbs, but he has absolutely been clowned. That is the right word. Across the sports world, well beyond the football world, on social media, because of this petulant display of, what do you want to call it, arrogance, short-sightedness, in which he's upset his team, led by what most people would say is the person really closest to him, kind of his agent, his mom, and they don't like it that someone else is going to wear the number 5 that Jayden wore at LSU for 2 years, and he won the Heisman Trophy, of course, back in 2023. And now a sophomore defensive back, DJ Pickett, is going to wear number 5. And while that is not what Team Daniels says publicly, that's really the heart of all this. And I can't think of anything more petty for a guy who's been an NFL quarterback for 2 years, had a great rookie season in the NFL, battled some injuries last year. He's coming back from those injuries. And his team sent a cease and desist letter to LSU, essentially saying, you can't make money off of Jayden's name, image, and likeness anymore. They don't say this, but unsaid is because you didn't show him the proper respect by retiring his jersey, or at least if you didn't formally retire it yet, and LSU has a policy that you'd have to wait some years. But if you didn't informally just basically take the number out of service. And the real problem, of course, shockingly, it's not Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin didn't cause this controversy. He will, sooner or later, he will spark one of his own. the latest in a series. But this is really Brian Kelly's fault. First of all, Brian Kelly brought Jayden Daniels from Arizona State to LSU, turned him loose to throw for well over 3,000 yards, run for over 1,000 yards, and win the Heisman in 2023. They did lose 3 games that year. I think they were 1-3 against ranked opponents. But Jayden won the Heisman, wearing number 5. And then Brian Kelly, in recruiting a year ago, because DJ Pickett was a freshman last year, but in recruiting DJ Pickett, DJ wanted to wear 5. He said he's been wearing it all his life. And Brian Kelly promised that he could wear that number. He didn't wear it last year. He wore number 3. But this year, with Brian Kelly gone and Lane Kiffin coming in, DJ asked Kiffin if he could wear number 5, and Kiffin said, sure. Why would you not want to keep happy a very, very talented athlete, an unusually tall cornerback who looks like he could be the latest in a long line of great LSU cornerbacks? And so Kiffin's going to let him wear number 5. He's been wearing it at practice. And apparently people on Team Daniels aren't real happy about this. And so we got a cease and desist letter. I don't think I've ever seen an athlete incinerate his legacy as thoroughly and as quickly as Jayden Daniels has. Why? To what purpose? To what benefit? Yes, I know Joe Burrow won the Heisman in 2019 as the LSU quarterback. And since then, no one has worn number 9, the number Burrow wore in Baton Rouge, on the LSU football team. But they haven't formally retired it. I think the only formal number and jersey, we have to make a distinction. You can retire a jersey, but not retire a number, or you can retire a number, which obviously goes with the jersey. Billy Cannon, who won the Heisman Trophy at 1958 at LSU, no, I was not around to cover that season. His number is out of service. No one will wear 20 again for LSU, and understandably so. It's a tremendous tribute, well-deserved. And it appears that no one's going to wear number 9 either. There is a difference, though. All Heisman Trophy winners are not created equal. Yes, that's a tremendous honor, and you will go down in LSU history, Jayden Daniels, for winning that Heisman. But you didn't win an SEC championship. You didn't win a national championship. You didn't get to the college football playoff. You opted out of the bowl game after the regular season in 2023. Again, not unusual now in today's environment. But you didn't do what Joe Burrow did. You did one thing that Joe Burrow did. You had a great individual season and put up big numbers, not as big as Burrow's, but you didn't win any championships. So you are inviting comparisons to Joe Burrow, or your team is. Sometimes athletes, especially an athlete coming off an injury, getting ready for the NFL season, he's in camp, maybe they're not as concerned about these things as other people, as the people around them, their friends, their family, their advisors, their mother. But somebody has to talk some sense into these folks. Because Jayden went in the last week, since the news broke about that cease and desist letter, Jayden has gone from a beloved former LSU player to a punchline. Major League Baseball teams are posting memes mocking this whole controversy. Out of respect for Jayden Daniels, we went from 4 runs to 6 runs. Out of respect for Jayden Daniels, we did this. Out of respect for Jayden Daniels, they are the categories of hurricanes will now go from 4 to 6. There will be no Cat 5 hurricane out of respect for Jayden Daniels, and on and on and on. Why? And it's interesting, and if you haven't seen it, check out my video on this subject. Posted it on Friday night on my YouTube channel, Kevin Skarbinski - Scarbo Knows. I found that obviously different schools do this different ways. Look at Auburn. This is a really good comparison. Cam Newton. Some people would say that Joe Burrow had the greatest individual season in college football history, at least by a quarterback. In 2019, when he threw for 6,000 yards, 60 touchdowns? The numbers are comical. They're astronomical. And LSU went undefeated and won the national championship. I have argued since 2010, when Cam Newton played his one and only season at Auburn, before Joe Burrow got to LSU, and after Joe Burrow did what he did at LSU, that Cam Newton holds that distinction of producing the greatest single individual season in college football history. And one of the reasons I say that, really the heart of the reason I say that, is that Joe Burrow was surrounded by future NFL talent. Cam Newton was not. Cam Newton did not have a skill player. There was, other than Cam Newton, who also caught a touchdown pass in his Heisman season, by the way, at Ole Miss, not a single Auburn player on that team ran for one single yard in the NFL, caught a single pass in the NFL. There were some good college players on that team, but there were no NFL players on that team, except on offense, except for Cam Newton. And I think Lee Zimba, the left tackle, he might have gotten one start in the NFL, but that's it. So Cam lifted a team that might have had a 7-5 roster with a mediocre quarterback or just an okay quarterback to an undefeated season and a national championship, and won one close game after another because of plays he made. Joe Burrow didn't have to win a lot of close games with LSU in 2019. So Cam played his one and only year at Auburn in 2010. You know when they retired his jersey? Last year, 2025. 15 years later. And I don't recall hearing any complaints from any members of the Newton family, any friends, any advisors, any agents, Cam himself. But they thoroughly enjoyed that ceremony last year. It's a really moving video clip. It's in my video on this subject on YouTube. And interestingly, in that video, you see Cecil Newton, Cam's dad, soaking up the moment. Of course, he almost derailed the moment during Cam's recruitment, and it almost came back to bite Cam and Auburn. But it didn't. The NCAA never found any recruiting violations on Auburn's part when it came to getting Cam to the Plains. Mississippi State, it's a different story, but they never found that Cam got any money or that Cecil got any money or that Auburn paid any money to Cam or Cecil or anyone in the family. And then we witnessed the greatest individual season in college football history. So 15 years passed from Cam's senior year, his only year at Auburn. And then he went on to the NFL where he was the number 1 overall draft pick, and his jersey retirement ceremony. Only 4 of those jerseys with the numbers attached have been retired at Auburn. The other 2 Heisman Trophy winners, Bo Jackson and Pat Sullivan, and Terry Beasley, who was Pat Sullivan's running mate, his favorite target, number 88 at wide receiver. So those are the only 4 numbers that have been retired at Auburn. No one will wear those numbers going forward unless someone from private equity wants to pay for them, I guess. I'm joking. Just kidding. Alabama does it differently. They've had 4 Heisman winners. They haven't retired any numbers or jerseys that we're aware of. Of course, with Alabama's long and illustrious history, where would you stop? Would you just do Heisman winners? They choose not to. The numbers of Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, Devontae Smith, and Bryce Young have all been in service. They may all be in service this year. But one of the coolest things that I've seen is what Arkansas does. And this is really, again, you need to honor your former players. You need to keep your former players close to your program. You need to respect them. You need to remember them. You need to welcome them back with open arms because they helped make your program what it is. And what Arkansas does is they don't retire the number. For example, there are players, offense and defense, that will wear number 5. I think they're wearing number 5 this year for the Razorbacks. Who wore number 5? Darren McFadden. Darren McFadden was one of the greatest running backs in SEC history. One of the best running backs I've ever seen play in person, and I've seen a lot of them. Going back to Bo Jackson, his senior year, when I started in this business. In fact, I had so much respect for Darren McFadden that in 2006 and 2007, his last 2 years at Arkansas, he was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. I was voting for the Heisman then. I put him first on my ballot both years. Troy Smith from Ohio State won it in 2006, the quarterback, and then he got embarrassed in the national championship game by Florida. And then Tim Tebow, of course, won it in 2007, which was the worst team year that Florida had while he was there. He had ridiculous numbers, but I thought Darren McFadden had a better year. I thought Arkansas was actually a little better team than Florida in 2007. So I had McFadden first and Tebow second on my ballot. So what Arkansas does is they designed a special patch that they put on the jersey of whoever wears number 5. And it has the famous DMAC silhouette. And it reminds you that you are privileged to be wearing that number. You're not the first person to wear that number. And one of the greatest players in school history wore that number. A great reminder, a great way to honor your former players. So kudos to Arkansas for coming up with that idea. And I've got a fun story here. I'm going to slide back. Hold on. I've got an Arkansas helmet here. And I don't know if you could see it. It is signed by Darren McFadden. Wait, I'll get it in the right spot. That's a mini Arkansas helmet signed by number 5, Darren McFadden. And this is a story I love to tell, and this is the kind of people you meet along the way in this business. Kevin Trainor, if you've watched SEC Media Days for any number of years, Kevin Trainor, longtime sports information director at the University of Arkansas. He has always been, or at least not always, but for a long time, he's been the moderator at SEC Media Days. And Kevin is salt of the earth. Just a great individual. And in 2008, the first of the back-to-back years in which Nick Saban and Alabama played Urban Meyer in Florida in the SEC championship game, of course, Florida won it in 2008. Alabama got their revenge in 2009. But 2008, we're in the fourth quarter. I got I bought tickets from a scalper for my wife and my sons. My sons at the time were 5 and 3. And my 5-year-old is a Florida fan. He goes to school at Florida. My 3-year-old, he's a lot older now. My 3-year-old was kind of an Arkansas fan because he liked the pig mascot. I got him a Suey pig hat from Fayetteville, one of my trips there. So he kind of liked the Razorbacks. And so we got that on the field at the end of the game, and my family was sitting right behind the Florida bench. I won't tell you how much I paid the scalper for those tickets. And, of course, my younger son, Cannon, he's the only person in the stadium, because Florida's playing Alabama, he's the only person in the stadium wearing an Arkansas jersey, a number 5 Darren McFadden jersey. And I pointed out to Kevin Trainor when we got down on the field late in the fourth quarter, Kevin was working the game, as a lot of SEC SIDs do. And I said, Kevin, you see that little blonde-headed kid over there with the number 5 Darren McFadden jersey? That's my son, Cannon. And I, explained the whole story. And a couple of weeks later, I get a package in the mail, and it is this signed Darren McFadden helmet. That's the kind of people you meet along the way, covering college football, covering college athletics across the SEC. Kevin Trainor, one of the best in the business, best people, best SIDs. So kudos to the schools that do it right. And LSU has done it right. This is not, look, I think everybody's on Team LSU on this Jayden Daniels controversy. Now, everybody's not on Team LSU when the season starts. I can't wait for that opener. Clemson LSU in Death Valley. Clemson coming off a terribly disappointing season. And it's going to be fun. Tomorrow, the AP preseason poll will be released. Of course, we got the coaches poll a couple of weeks ago. We will get the AP poll tomorrow. They will be very similar. There's a lot of groupthink that goes on in these polls. And I'll tell you, I have voted in the AP football poll before. I voted in the AP basketball poll before. You think the football poll is hard? Try the basketball poll. Try keeping up with all of those D1 basketball teams, especially early in the season, and picking out the top 25. But football, of course, is no longer relevant in terms of deciding a national champion because it's no longer part of the system in which they rank teams to decide who gets into the playoff, into the postseason. It was at one time. And in fact, before we had a BCS, the only time I only voted in the AP poll once. It was 1988. It was the year, by the way, the last year that Notre Dame won the national championship. It was rather easy. They beat West Virginia in a bowl game. There was not really a controversy about who should be number one after that one. Auburn had a great shot that year. That might have been, other than 83, might have been Pat Dye's best team at Auburn. The only loss in the regular season was the earthquake game at LSU. I remember I was standing in the end zone, right behind the end zone, when Tommy Hodson threw the winning touchdown pass to Eddie Fuller that set off the seismograph across campus. And LSU, which hadn't scored all day, won 7-6. Derailed Auburn's run at a potential national championship. But I voted in the AP poll that year, and I did have Notre Dame number one. Again, not much controversy, pretty easy choice. But I decided at some point, you know what? I, as someone who covers the sport, should not be deciding who gets to play for a national championship. Or, in the AP's case, they vote for a national champion. They award a national championship. Now, there's no controversy anymore. We don't have split national championships anymore. But we did. We had one back in, 2003? Nick Saban's first national title at LSU. He won the BCS version, he and the Tigers. Meanwhile, Pete Carroll and USC won the AP title. We don't have that anymore. But when we did, when there was a possibility that you could have split national titles, I didn't think that I, as a media member, should be helping to decide that. So I decided a long time ago I wouldn't vote in the poll. But we'll get the latest AP poll tomorrow. My gut tells me Alabama was 13 in the coaches poll. I think they're going to be a little lower. I think there is a profound lack of, I won't say respect, but belief in this Alabama football team among media. If you follow folks who cover the sport, I don't hear a lot of optimism about this Alabama team. I'm a little different. I see possibilities. I know the history of third-year head coaches at Alabama. They've done rather well. Even the Mikes. Mike Dubose won the SEC championship in his third year and beat Steve Spurrier twice to do it. Once in the swamp, once in the SEC championship game. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, if I hadn't been on the premises for both games, I'm not sure I would believe it. And Mike Shula, in his third year, started 9-0. Was ranked in the top 10. Played a showdown with LSU in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Jamarcus Russell was the quarterback at LSU that year. That was Les Miles' first year as the LSU head coach. And LSU won the game in overtime. And Alabama, you talk about losing a game twice or one loss costing you the next game. That is Exhibit A. That Alabama team was so close to going on to maybe play for a national championship. I know it sounds absurd now, but what if they beat LSU in overtime in that game? What if they get to 10-0 before they go to Auburn? But they didn't, and they were crushed, and then they Auburn's defense crushed Brody Croyle, sacked him, 11 times? They honk if you sacked Brody game. But that was Mike Shula. And then they won a bowl game. They finished 10-2. So third year tends to be the charm for Alabama head coaches. I also think they're going to be fine at quarterback, whoever starts. And I'm leaning Keelan Russell at this point based on what I've heard. But I don't think it really matters if you look at the history of Alabama quarterbacks. First year starting quarterbacks. How about this for a fun fact? You know how many consecutive first-year starting quarterbacks at Alabama have gotten their team to either the BCS championship game or the college football playoff? Not 2, not 4, not 6, not 8, 10. 10 consecutive first-year starting quarterbacks at Alabama have gotten the Crimson Tide to the postseason. That's absurd. That doesn't sound real. It is real. I looked it up. I went into great detail. Again, if you want to follow that more in depth, I've got a column coming out tomorrow in the Birmingham News on AL.com as well. So a lot of reasons to feel good about this Alabama football team that maybe other people aren't seeing. They are dismissing Alabama as a serious contender. And again, it's not like they've fallen off the face of the earth. They were 13th in the coaches poll. I think they'll be about 15 or 16 in the AP poll. I think Auburn will get votes. They won't be in the top 25. I think people are missing the boat on Auburn. I really do. I did a video this past week. I invite you to check it out. People are asking, who could be this year's Indiana? I've seen Oklahoma State mentioned because they have a new head coach who took his quarterback with him from North Texas. I've seen some other schools mentioned. But who I haven't heard mentioned, except by me, is Auburn. Who could be this year's Indiana? Now, I'm not saying this year's Indiana in terms of winning a national championship and going undefeated and going 16-0. I'm talking about Curt Cignetti's first year at Indiana when he took over the worst program historically in the history of major college football and got them to the playoff, went 11-1 in the regular season, lost only to Ohio State, got to the playoff where they lost to Notre Dame to finish 11-2. That was a team that came out of nowhere. And it was built on a core of players that Cignetti and coaches that Cignetti brought with him from James Madison. He didn't bring a quarterback with him. That's the advantage that Alex Golesh has. He's bringing not just a number of players from South Florida, but he's bringing a quarterback and his center. No one's talking about the importance of bringing a quarterback and a center that have worked together. That relationship is so vital to an offense's operation. And Cole Best and Byron Brown have done this before. So we'll see. We'll see. But I think if you ignore the favorable conditions that exist for Auburn to shock people, well, first of all, that means you don't know your SEC history or your Auburn history. Auburn's done this before. Long before Indiana thought about winning 11 games or getting to the playoff or winning a national championship, Auburn has done some pretty spectacular things early in coaches' tenures. And when it comes to first-year coaches, Terry Bowden and Gus Malzahn take the cake. Terry went undefeated in 93, and Gus came within an eyelash or a fingertip or a Chris Davis fingertip in the end zone defending Kelvin Benjamin of winning a national title against Florida State. Why couldn't it happen? I know Auburn's had 5 straight losing seasons, 5 straight 7-loss seasons. We all know the drill by now. But, like I keep saying, August is the time to believe. August is the time to think, you know what? My team's going to do something special this year. My team's going to do something it hasn't done for a long time, maybe ever. My team's going to do something that nobody else thinks they can do. Now, look, college football being college football, you might get disabused of that notion fairly quickly. Maybe it'll happen in September. Maybe it won't. But why not look on the bright side right now? All right, let's go to the audience, and I am going to have to. I can't figure out my eyes. I don't know if I should wear my contacts. All right, I'm an Auburn. Oswald P. Haygood. Love that name, if that is your real name. I am an Auburn fan, but I'm worried about Brown's release. SEC DEs can wreak havoc in the backfield as is. Well, look, Byron Brown is not a classic thrower. Can we agree on that? He doesn't have the classic drop back, form, release. And I'm not a quarterback guru myself, but that's pretty obvious. Everyone can tell that. But it's not. Did Nick Marshall have a classic release as the Auburn quarterback? He didn't throw for an awful lot of yards in 2013. He threw for a lot more in 2014, his second year as a starter. But I think it's not about the aesthetics of it. It's about the quickness of it. As you pointed out, you got to be able to get rid of the ball. The advantage he has is the same advantage that Nick Marshall had. If he has to skedaddle, he can skedaddle. If he has to get out of the pocket, he can get out of the pocket. And not just avoid the rush, but do damage downfield. And again, I've made the Nick Marshall comparison. I'm not saying he's going to be Nick Marshall 2.0. He's not as quick as Nick Marshall. He's thicker, stronger, more able to break tackles. Nick was lightning and had a great knack for running the read option. When to give it, when to keep it, when to step back and throw the pop pass. See Sammy Coates in the fourth quarter against Alabama in 2013. So, look, this will all play out. And Byron's been effective. That's an advantage that Auburn has. Not just him, but every player that came from South Florida, every coach that came from South Florida, they have played in difficult, big-time environments. They played in the swamp. And you say, well, big deal. They beat last year's Florida team in the swamp. Guess what? Texas couldn't do that. Arch Manning couldn't do that. But Byron Brown and South Florida did. They've also played Miami, last year's Miami team that got to the national championship game and gave Indiana all it wanted in the finale. So it'll play out, but I have a feeling that Byron Brown is going to have a big year. All right, I'm going to lean in. Aubie's Blue Chew. Scarborough, that's one of the things I've been called. They're being hard on you from the plains. They are not listening. We will definitely see. We have a coach. Just my opinion. It's all just our opinions, isn't it? Hopefully our opinions are somewhat educated. Hopefully we do our homework. Hopefully we have some contacts. Hopefully we do some reporting when we offer opinions. But all predictions are just that. No one knows for sure. No one saw Auburn 2013 coming. No one saw Indiana 2024 coming when Cignetti first got there. And look, people can't. I have been. My family and I played a game last night about where you try to get people to lie. Like you try to give funny answers or fake answers, and you try to make people believe your lies. And one of the questions I was asked was, name an insult that someone has directed at you, the funniest insult or something like that. And it's hard to pick one because I've had so many. I'm used to it by now. Doesn't bother me unless you get personal, unless you get ugly, unless you start using a bunch of 4-letter words. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But I've also been right before, and I hope I'll be right again. So we'll see. That's the fun of it. That's why I can't wait. What are we, 3 weeks out from week 1? 3 weekends out? And 3 weeks, 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about 0. 3 weeks from tonight, we will be talking about Auburn and Baylor. We'll be talking about Alabama and East Carolina. We'll be talking about LSU and Clemson. And that's going to be fun. Because then we'll see, were we right? Where were we wrong? 1 week won't decide all of that, of course. But the fun is on Saturdays when the games start. So hope that calendar moves quickly and we get there. All right. Oswald again. Hopefully Brown can be. Oh, we got a wise guy on our hands. Nick Newton or Cam Marshall. All right, it's not going to be Cam Newton, I'll tell you that. And anybody, I've said this before, any and all comparisons of any and all quarterbacks to Cam Newton are invalid and should be struck down and killed with fire because that dude was one of one. I don't know why, but that for some reason recently on social media, I keep seeing in circulation. Remember the highlight he had? People said it was his Heisman moment. I disagree. He had so many of those against LSU, where he breaks free into the secondary and he makes one man miss, and then he makes another man miss, and then he turns on the jet and he outruns Patrick Peterson to the end zone, and Peterson tackles him, but it's too late. And just again, one of so many incredible plays that he made that year. I mean, come on. He scored 51 touchdowns. People say 50. They remember the 20 he ran for, the 30 he threw for. They forget the one he caught at Ole Miss. I remember that one. But no, Byron Brown's not going to be Cam Newton. Byron Brown just has to be Byron Brown. And if he puts the up numbers like he did 3 years ago and last year at South Florida, if he does what he did last year, if he runs, I'll say this right now. If Byron Brown throws for 3,000 yards and runs for 1,000 yards this year, which he did at South Florida last year, Auburn fans are going to be very, very happy when they get to the last Saturday of the regular season and they walk into Bryant-Denny Stadium. I don't know what the record's going to be, but it will be much better than it has been, and it will be much better than most people think it will be. Because if he's able to have that kind of success, you know DJ Durkin's defense is going to do its part. It's going to stand up. If Brown in the offense can generate some heat and put up some numbers, look out. All right. It was Bama. Who was Bama? I got you. Somebody who sort of fits between those legends. I got you. Kind of a combination. Look, if he's a reasonable facsimile of Nick Marshall or Cam Newton, and I think the Nick Marshall comparison is a little more relevant in the sense that, look, Nick Marshall, who saw Nick Marshall coming other than Gus Malzahn and that coaching staff? Nick Marshall was a defensive back a couple of years earlier at Georgia. Then he went to junior college, played quarterback. Then he went to Auburn and earned the starting job after Auburn hadn't been very good at quarterback for the 2 years after Cam Newton in 11 and 12. That's why Gene Chizik was asked to leave, and they brought back Gus. I mean, who saw Nick Marshall coming? Running for 1,000 yards, throwing for he ran for a little over 1,000 in 2013. He threw for 1,900 and change. So he didn't even throw for 2,000. But again, his decision-making, his sense of the moment, his mastery at the mesh point on the read option. And here's something else to keep in mind. If you want to make comparisons, and I love to do this. I love to flash back and think what was and what might be again, whether it's Auburn, Alabama, LSU, whomever. Trey Mason in 2012, the year Auburn went 3-9 overall, 0-8 in the SEC. He ran for 1,000 yards, just got over 1,000 in the last game, barely over 1,000. Did anyone see him running for 1,800 yards the next year and breaking Bo Jackson's single-season Auburn record? No, they didn't. And if you say you did, you're lying. What did Jeremiah Cobb run for last year? 969, just under 1,000 yards. Now, I'm not saying that Jeremiah Cobb is going to break Trey Mason's Auburn single-season rushing record of over 1,800 yards. But it's still ringing in my ears that Alex Golesh said Auburn is going to run the piss out of the ball. They didn't do that enough last year. They did it against Baylor. Jackson Arnold looked like Jack Mildren. You got to have some experience to know who Jack Mildren was. He ran that old Oklahoma wishbone back in the 70s. But they didn't run it enough. They didn't run it at the right times. That's not going to be a problem under Golish. If you think this is an air raid, you're going to be disappointed. If you think they're going to come in there and fling it around 50 times a game, you're going to be surprised. Because what makes Alex Golish's offense work is balance, is the ability to spread the field. You spread your wideouts, you spread your line. If you spread out the defense, yeah, they're going to hit you over the top, but they're also going to gut you inside. If the offensive line does its job. That's the biggest question mark for me. Not Byron Brown, not Jeremiah Cobb, not even the wideouts, Jazz Nimrod and those folks, but can the offensive line stand up? I definitely think Oswald again. The prayer of Jordan Hare. Yeah, the prayer of Jordan Hare. Who could ever forget? Now that was luck. Now I'll tell you, I'll share this. Of all the years, Gus Malzahn was offensive coordinator at Auburn for 3 years. Then he went to Arkansas State for a year. Then he came back. He was the head coach for 8 years. And in all that time, I only got one phone call from Gus Malzahn expressing his dissatisfaction with a column I had written. And interestingly, it was several years. I don't remember the exact year, but it was a number of years after 2013. And a lot of people to this day have tried to diminish the accomplishments of the 2013 Auburn football team by calling them lucky. The kick six was not luck. Auburn ran for 296 yards against an Alabama defense led by Nick Saban and Kirby Smart in 2013. 296 yards. Auburn drove for the tying touchdown late in the fourth quarter against the Nick Saban, Kirby Smart defense. They ran the ball, and they ran it, and they ran it again, and they ran it one more time. And then finally, Nick Marshall ran the pop pass to perfection and threw the tying touchdown to Sammy Coates. That wasn't luck. Putting Chris Davis back in case the long field goal that Alabama attempted came up short was not luck. It was smart. Now, the prayer of Jordan Hare, yeah. There was some, you want to call it divine intervention, you want to call it Auburn Jesus, you want to call it whatever you want to call it, but yeah. I'm not sure Ricardo Lewis ever saw the ball until it was in his hands after it got deflected. Yeah, that was luck. But hey, you got to have some luck during a championship season. Who was the defensive back in that game? In the prayer and Jordan Hare? Was that Trey Matthews? Was that the dude who later transferred to Auburn? There were two Georgia DBs that kind of ran into each other they high pointed the ball, but they high pointed each other as well, and that created the deflection that Ricardo Lewis was able to gather in. And we don't talk about it in these terms. What a great catch. What incredible concentration. Look, wideouts as a group are divas. How many guys would have given up on the play when they saw Nick Marshall's throw? Nick Marshall had a receiver, a crossing route wide open underneath that, by the way, that would have gotten the first down, but he went for everything and he got it. But what an amazing concentration and incredible hands and hand-eye coordination by Ricardo Lewis to gather that in after the deflection and take it in for the touchdown. That's pretty amazing. So there was talent on that team. And that's what I say about this Auburn team. There's talent there. The talent was underutilized at Auburn in 2012, and Gus took advantage of it and got the most out of it in 2013. And there are some similarities. Last year's Auburn team obviously had talent, that was underutilized. Now, some of that talent is now playing elsewhere, like Cam Coleman. You guys, of course, everybody has seen that one-handed catch he made in practice. It's got to be the gloves, right? No, Cam's he's a great athlete. He made some great plays at Auburn. We'll see if Arch Manning is good enough to take advantage of all the talent that he's surrounded by at Texas to live up to the expectations that Texas has this year. When does Auburn play Texas? I haven't checked the future schedules, but obviously they haven't played them since Texas joined the SEC. Covered an Auburn-Texas game way back in the day in Austin as well as in Auburn. So there's talent there. Can you unlock it? Can you get the most out of it? Trey Matthews and a guy with a hyphenated name that escapes me were the UGA DBs. That's true. I can see the other DB. I can't recall his name right now, but you've got a good memory. I like to think I do as well, but this one's not. I'm not quite dialed in on that one. Harvey Clemens, Josh Harvey Clemens. How about that? Did I get that right? I think that was his name. Okay, well, Feinbaum and Stephen A. Smith. Okay, I'm going to read this. This is Oswald P. Haygood. While I agree, Feinbaum and Stephen A. Smith are idiots, this is a pretty crucial year for DeBoer. Bama is trending down in his tenure. Well, hold on a second. First of all, the piling on of Kalen DeBoer has been so over the top and so beyond reason and beyond logic and beyond facts that I don't quite understand it. I understand Stephen A. Smith's act. The man doesn't know college football. He just doesn't. All you have to do is listen to him talk or rant and rave, which are one and the same where he's concerned. He doesn't know college football. He loves him some Nick Saban. But other than that, he doesn't know the game. And that's what gets me. You say Alabama's trending down. Okay. Do you know Alabama has not made the postseason, the college football playoff in back-to-back years since 2020 and 2021? Who was the coach in 2022? Nick Saban. He got back there in 23, but his last consecutive playoff appearances were 2020 and 2021. Nick Saban didn't win a national championship his last 3 years at Alabama. He lost in the national championship game in 2021. He lost in the semifinals in 2023. And he didn't get there in 2022. Some people, including me, would say that's trending downward. That the Alabama at the end of Nick Saban's tenure was not the Alabama at the early in Nick Saban's tenure or in the middle of Nick Saban's tenure or for the majority of Nick Saban's tenure. That they were trending down. And you can't say Kalen DeBoer is trending down when he went 9-4 in his first year, and then he went 11-4 in his second year. He didn't get to the SEC championship game or the playoff in his first year. He got to both in his second year. Yeah, I know it was ugly when he got there in both cases. Well, they did win a playoff game on the road after trailing 17-0 against an SEC team in Oklahoma. So that's not trending down. That's trending up from 2024 to 2025. This year, we'll see. Can they get back to the playoff? I think they can. I think people who are dismissing the possibility are being short-sighted. So what I don't understand is Paul, who does know SEC football, cheerleading Stephen A. Smith when they're on Get Up, when Stephen A. goes off on a rant, just shredding DeBoer like he's the worst coach in the history of Alabama football. Dude, have you heard about Mike DuBose? Heard about Mike Shula? Heard about Ears Whitworth? I mean, come on. What are we talking about? Of course, I was on Paul's show on Friday. You could probably find a clip of it somewhere. We talked about, he was intrigued by my column that suggested that Auburn could be this year's Indiana. And we had a nice conversation about that subject. So we'll see. But if you listen to anything that Stephen A. Smith has to say about college football, you are terribly misguided, my friends. And you might want to seek out other voices who actually follow the sport on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis. Like, I don't know, someone that looks like me. All right. NIL has completely changed the dynamic at schools along with expectations. DeBoer is a victim of Bama's success in a bygone era. You are correct. Look, one of the reasons Nick Saban's no longer at Alabama is because the landscape of college football in which he dominated the sport no longer exists. He didn't win 6 national championships with NIL. He didn't win 6 national championships at Alabama with a transfer portal. How many of those great players that came to Tuscaloosa and waited their turn, like, I don't know, Derrick Henry, would have done that if they could have left after any season without having to sit out at their next school? Derrick Henry was profoundly unhappy. What year was it? The 2013? 2013 was the year Alabama was going for a three-peat, lost the kick six game, didn't get to the SEC championship game, didn't get to the BCS championship game, and ended up losing to Oklahoma in a bowl game. And Derrick Henry was not happy. Wasn't happy the next year either. What happened in 2015? Dude won the Heisman. Dude carried 8 million times for 8 trillion yards. Carried it, 40 times against Auburn in the Iron Bowl that year in 2015? Remember, it's always funny to look back, and we all do it. In fact, Cold Takes Exposed is a Twitter account. The guy who does that, and I've gotten dinged a couple of times, rightfully so, he's put out a book compiling some of the best examples of know-it-alls knowing nothing. And what was it that all the know-it-alls said about Derrick Henry after his Heisman season at Alabama? Man, they're running him into the ground, putting a lot of miles on those tires. How is he gonna last in the NFL? How many people got that wrong? How many people were wearing egg on their face after those comments? And it's funny how today, and we started off talking about Ty Simpson's first NFL preseason game. He had a really good day for the Rams, really good numbers. And now you've got people saying, "See, we told you." A lot of people laughed at Ty Simpson being a first-round draft pick. A lot of people said Sean McVay didn't want him, that the Rams drafted him anyway. And now you've got the crowd that didn't jump on that bandwagon coming out and saying, "Well, see, okay, guys, let's tap the brakes. It's an exhibition game. Yes, it's a positive, and you got to hope that Ty Simpson has a really nice NFL career because he's a really good dude from a really good family. But let's not crown him the next Matt Stafford just yet." All right. I've got to find a way to make your comments bigger, folks. I've been reading and enjoying your stuff for decades. So you're no youngster yourself, Oswald. I appreciate that. I'm from Birmingham, grew up going to AU games from the early 80s and beyond. You are the most impartial sports guy in Alabama. I am humbled and appreciative of your comment. And look, as you know, I get accused of being an Alabama fan, and I get accused of being an Auburn fan. But what's curious about that is I get accused of being an Alabama fan by Auburn fans. I get accused of being an Auburn fan by Alabama fans because of something I wrote that was positive towards the other side, towards your rival, or I wrote something that was negative about your side. But I have and if you know my background, I don't know if you could see it back there. You see that Penn State National Championship Coke bottle from 1986, I think. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I grew up cheering for Penn State because I grew up in Pennsylvania. I was actually enrolled to go to Penn State before my family moved to Alabama after I graduated from high school. And so I didn't grow up cheering for Alabama or Auburn. I also cheered for Notre Dame because I was raised Catholic, and I think it's a church law. So, so I didn't grow up in an Auburn or Alabama family. Yes, I was the Auburn beat writer when I started writing at the Birmingham News when Bo Jackson was a senior. So I get attached to Auburn for that reason. And look, I've developed some great relationships with Auburn folks. I've developed some great relationships with Alabama folks. And I've had the privilege, and I don't say this lightly, to be able to cover both of those schools for a long time and to work with people at both schools for a long time and witness some of the greatest moments in the history of both of those programs. And I don't take that lightly. And I feel very, very lucky that I've gotten to do that. And I appreciate you saying that, Oswald, because that's always been my goal, is to be impartial, call it like I see it, praise when it's required, criticize when it's necessary, and also be honest when I'm wrong. Because that's one thing you do as a commentator, analyst, columnist, is you offer an opinion. Hopefully it's an educated opinion, and hopefully you do your homework and you get it right more often than you don't. All right, we're going to wind this up here, folks. Let's see what we got left. Blue Chew, player control is gone. Uber to the next location. Yeah, I hear you. Player control in terms of coaches and programs controlling players. Yes. And you can essentially catch an Uber to your next location, which is why, again, I'll wrap this up. Jayden Daniels, what are you thinking? Jayden Daniels' family, mother, advisors, what are you thinking? If you stayed at Arizona State, would you have won the Heisman? Would you have become a top NFL draft pick? Maybe, maybe not. But you went to LSU and you did those things there. So why tarnish your own legacy at your school? That's why I will always have great respect for Cam Newton, because when he left Auburn and went to the NFL after 1 year, how many people said he was a one-year mercenary? You'll never see him on campus again. Obviously, those folks were wrong. How many times have you seen Cam through the years in the stands at Jordan-Hare, leading the cheers? Seen him at basketball games doing the same. He's an Auburn man. That's why it was really cool to see Auburn retire his number and his jersey last year, and you could see what it meant to him. More players need to realize, and they need to realize it before they jump in the transfer portal and before they jump in that Uber to try to find a place where they think the grass will be greener. If you endear yourself to a fan base, you endear yourself to a program, you can set yourself up for life. You will make connections and develop friendships that will last you for the rest of your life. I think more people advising college athletes need to make that point to them about just what it means to be part of the Auburn family or the Alabama family or the UAB family or the Florida family or whatever school that you're fortunate to have the opportunity to play football or basketball or baseball or any other sport for. All right, folks. Thank you so much for Oswald and to Blue Chew for your contributions tonight. Make sure you tell your friends we're going to do this every Sunday night during the football season and probably continue it in basketball as well. I thank you for your time tonight. I thank you for watching the videos, reading my columns. Again, you can find those in the Birmingham News, which is now an online subscription publication. You can also find links on AL.com. And I hope you'll start checking out our high school game of the week. Again, this Thursday, Phoenix City, Thompson, Central Phoenix City. 7 o'clock kickoff, pregame show, 5 to 6 on Alabama Public Television. I'll be doing that every Thursday night. I'll be putting out 3 videos every week on YouTube, writing my columns every week. So appreciate everyone's support. Appreciate our shared passion for college sports in general and college football in particular in the state of Alabama. Have a great night, everybody. I'm out. See you.